Caitlin Clark is driving the WNBA insane. It's to the point that she may need to step away from the WNBA, have a billionaire come in that has the money to prove a point, and say, Caitlin, I'll pay you $50 million just to see if the WNBA can make it without you. Let's go create a complete different league and expose the hell out of the WNBA just to embarrass this Angel Reese girl that Jamil Hill just said she could go down as a Michael Jordan of WNBA.
Yeah.
And what?
So you're telling me that Caitlin Clark just got blamed for the WNBA's CBA failure by the exact same players and media members who spent 2 entire seasons treating her like public enemy number 1? That is absolutely rich. Now, serious rumors are circulating everywhere that she's genuinely considering taking her talents to Europe if these negotiations don't get resolved soon. Think about the irony here. The league that rode her coattails to a massive $2.2 billion media deal might actually lose her because they couldn't stop sabotaging their own success for 5 minutes.
So the WNBPA is taking to social media, taking to the public. And I want to share with you guys the most recent letter that was issued from the WNBPA. At midnight, the 2020 WNBPA collective bargaining agreement will expire. Despite demonstrating our willingness to compromise in order to get a deal done, the WNBA and its teams have failed to meet us at the table with the same spirit and seriousness. Instead, they've remained committed to undervaluing player contributions, dismissing player concerns, and running out the clock. Today's display of an inflatable rat, a universal symbol of labor protest outside of the NBA store, calls attention to how the league and its teams have handled these negotiations. By delaying and clinging to the status quo, they are jeopardizing the livelihoods of players and the trust and investment of fans, all in the name of preserving regressive.
The panic setting in right now is real, and let me be crystal clear, it is absolutely deserved. If Caitlin Clark actually leaves for Europe because the WNBA can't get its act together, who really deserves the blame? Is it the players who openly resented her, or the league that sat back and enabled it? The WNBA is currently staring down the barrel of a scenario they never prepared for because in their arrogance, they never thought it was even remotely possible.
I feel like the players have lost sense of reality a little bit, because imagine putting up a rat that a lot of unions do when it comes to like schools, construction companies, people that are making a lot less than the kind of money that the WNBA players are making. They got offered a max salary of over $1 million. Their max salary last year was $250,000, and now it's over $1 million. And then on top of that, the average salary is around $500,000. And then you're putting a rat out in public display. I don't know. I feel like you've lost sense of reality a little bit. That's not the real world. The real world does not want to hear constantly about millionaires' problems.
Let's establish Caitlin Clark, the single player who brought millions of new viewers and a level of mainstream attention this league has literally never had before, might just decide that playing in Europe makes a whole lot more sense than dealing with the absolute dysfunction that is currently paralyzing American women's basketball. That possibility has sent massive shockwaves through the league offices, and frankly, it should terrify everyone whose livelihood depends on the WNBA continuing to exist as a relevant entity. Let's take a second to establish what is actually happening here on the ground. The CBA negotiations haven't just stalled, they have completely and utterly broken down. The deadline came and went without an agreement, leaving everyone in a state of total uncertainty.
Things, people were saying, hey, this could be Caitlin Clark's fault. And before I just flipped and lost my mind, I had to sit and think about it. And you know what, Caitlin Clark, this is all happening and it's your fault. You're the reason. Your greatness, your star power, you are the reason for there being no 2026 WNBA season as of now. Because had you not been such a great player and a big star, these women wouldn't be demanding all of the stuff that they're demanding right now. So yeah, I guess technically it is your fault, I guess. You're too big of a star.
Now players are being blamed for holding out on what some are calling unrealistic demands, while the union is firing back and blaming owners for undervaluing their contributions. Free agency is currently stuck in this weird limbo because nobody has a clue what kind of salary cap structure will even exist when the dust settles. And right in the middle of this absolute chaos, some players and media members made the baffled decision to make Caitlin Clark the scapegoat for these negotiations failing. That decision right there might end up going down as the single biggest strategic mistake in the entire history of this league.
That the WNBA has hostile players, bro. We all witnessed it during the 2025 and 24 season. These players pretty much hate Caitlin Clark with a passion. And I'm here to tell you right now, the hate is growing even stronger because many people in the Players Association and people in the media is blaming Caitlin Clark for potentially being the one holding out when it comes to the CBA not getting done. Now, the players had a chance to go on a strike.
You have to understand, she is simply too big of a star to be treated this way. Clark brought the WNBA more attention in just one season than it had accumulated in the previous decade combined. And I'm not exaggerating. Her games drew millions of viewers consistently, shattering records every single time she stepped on the court. Arenas sold out everywhere the Fever played, turning away thousands of fans who just wanted a glimpse of the action. Her jersey became the best-selling item in league history almost overnight. Television networks paid that staggering $2.2 billion for broadcasting rights, and let's be honest, they did it specifically because of the massive audience growth she generated. Every single financial improvement the league experienced can be traced directly back to her impact on mainstream interest. And how did the established players respond to this gift? With open hostility, palpable jealousy, and physical play that crossed the lines of sportsmanship repeatedly.
She said no thank you to the NBA offering her a chance to participate in their three-point shooting contest. Now think how amazing that is. If I'd have said to you a couple years ago, yeah, the NBA, to save their All-Star weekend, they're going to ask a WNBA player to join the three-point shooting contest to save it.
We watched flagrant fouls that would have been called differently for literally anyone else in the league. We heard veterans making snide comments about preferential treatment while simultaneously complaining that she made too much money. The cognitive dissonance on display was absolutely staggering to witness. They desperately wanted the financial benefits that her popularity created, but they resented her deeply for being the reason those benefits existed in the first place. It was a classic case of wanting the golden egg while trying to strangle the goose that laid it. Now the CBA talks have failed, and suddenly, Clark is being positioned by these same people as someone who might be holding things up. The logic here doesn't even make sense if you think about it for 2 seconds. She hasn't been making public demands or holding the league hostage. She hasn't threatened to sit out or caused a scene in the media. She stayed completely professional while absolute chaos erupted around her. But apparently, facts don't matter when you desperately need a villain to distract everyone from your own failures. So Clark gets blamed for labor negotiations she's barely even involved in, while the union leadership, which has obvious conflicts of interest, somehow escapes scrutiny. It's a deflection tactic. Plain and simple. Here's where the Europe angle becomes incredibly significant and why fans should be worried. European basketball leagues have been courting WNBA stars for years, and they know how to treat talent. The money is often significantly better, especially when you factor in the free housing, transportation, and other massive benefits that come standard with overseas contracts. The lifestyle can be much more comfortable without the intense, negative media scrutiny that comes with playing in America. And the basketball is competitive enough to keep her sharp while avoiding the toxicity and dysfunction that's currently plaguing the WNBA. For someone like Clark, playing in Europe would solve multiple problems simultaneously. She'd finally escape an environment where veteran players clearly resent her presence every time she walks into the gym. She'd avoid all the uncertainty created by these CBA negotiations that look like they might drag on for months. She'd make comparable or even better money without having to deal with the hostile treatment she experienced throughout her entire time in Indiana. And she'd still get to play basketball at an incredibly high level while her brand continues growing globally through her massive endorsement deals. The panic this possibility creates among WNBA leadership and players is entirely predictable because they see the writing on the wall. They know exactly what happens if Clark leaves. Television ratings would drop immediately back to pre-Clark levels, erasing all the gains of the last year. Casual fans who came specifically to watch her would lose interest instantly and stop paying attention. Sponsorship deals that were signed based on projected growth would get renegotiated or canceled outright. The entire financial structure that was built on assumptions about sustained popularity would collapse in on itself. Clark leaving would expose the uncomfortable truth of how fragile the WNBA's recent success actually was. It wasn't organic growth built on collective effort like they want you to believe. It was one singular player capturing the mainstream imagination in ways nobody else had ever managed. Remove that player from the equation, and you're left with a league that, let's be real, most casual sports fans still don't care about. That is just basic organizational competence. 101. You support the person driving your success. You don't alienate them. Don't let jealous veterans create hostile conditions for your biggest asset. Address flagrant fouls appropriately, instead of letting physicality spiral completely out of control. None of this required genius-level strategy or 4D chess. It just required not being actively self-destructive. Instead, what we got was 2 seasons of Clark being treated poorly while league leadership sat on their hands and did nothing meaningful to address it. Commissioner Kathy Engelbert made these vague, weak statements about physicality being part of the game. Referees allowed contact that would have drawn immediate suspensions in any other context. Media members downplayed her impact at every turn while trying to elevate players who couldn't draw anywhere near the same audience. The message they sent was loud and clear. We'll take your popularity and the money you bring, but we won't actually respect or protect you. Now that negligence might end up costing them absolutely everything. If Clark decides that Europe makes more sense for her career, she's not coming back anytime soon. Once you leave, the momentum shifts and opportunities emerge elsewhere. She's got a global appeal that transcends the WNBA entirely. She doesn't need American women's basketball the way it desperately needs her. That power dynamic should have been obvious to everyone from day one. But jealousy and short-term thinking prevented people from seeing it clearly until it was too late. The owners seem to understand this dynamic a lot better than the players do right now. They're pushing teams to proceed with free agency preparations despite the CBA uncertainty. That suggests they believe a deal will eventually get done, and they're not willing to let union leverage paralyze league operations. The status quo period allows them to send qualifying offers under expired CBA terms while negotiations continue. That legal framework gives ownership significantly more flexibility than the players seem to realize. The players thought they had all this leverage because of increased revenue and attention, but they forgot that leverage only exists if the source of that attention stays involved. If Clark leaves, their bargaining position evaporates instantly. Owners can simply point to cratering viewership and declining sponsor interest as justification for not meeting union demands. The entire negotiating dynamic shifts from pay us what we're worth based on recent growth to we'll be lucky if the league survives without its biggest draw. Union leadership, with Napheesa Collier as vice president, has created additional problems through what looks like obvious conflicts of interest. She runs Unrivaled, a competing basketball league that directly benefits when the WNBA struggles. Her credibility during these negotiations is severely compromised by those business interests, and her public statements criticizing league leadership while promoting her own venture have undermined the union's position. Now that her league's ratings are disastrous, suddenly she's trying to present herself as reasonable and collaborative. The pivot is transparent, and frankly, it's not working. Kelsey Mitchell's free agency situation represents everything that is currently broken about this process. She's one of the league's best players and was absolutely crucial to Indiana's success alongside Clark. Her future should be straightforward and easy to resolve. Instead, it's caught up in broader negotiations that have nothing to do with her individual value. That uncertainty affects her career planning and the Fever's ability to build on what they accomplished last season. All of this is happening because league-wide talks broke down over issues that could have been resolved months ago. The Fever really built something special. Clark, Mitchell, Aaliyah Boston, Lexi Hall, Nalisa Smith, the chemistry and talent on that roster created basketball that fans actually wanted to watch. They made the playoffs and showed everyone they could compete when everything clicked. That momentum should carry into next season with the team adding pieces and improving. Instead, everything is uncertain because people who should have been focused on growth got distracted by petty grievances and power struggles. Blaming Clark for the CBA failure is the ultimate example of cutting off your nose to spite your face. She's the reason these negotiations matter at all. Without her impact, we'd be talking about minor adjustments to existing terms instead of significant revenue sharing and massive salary increases. She created the financial growth that makes player demands even remotely plausible, and the response from some players is to make her the villain when talks break down. The short-sightedness is absolutely breathtaking. The tweet suggesting Clark might indirectly cause the WNBA to end isn't even that far-fetched anymore. If she leaves for Europe and viewership collapses, the financial model supporting league operations falls apart. Television deals get renegotiated downward immediately. Sponsors reduce their commitments or pull out entirely. Teams start losing money again. The whole thing could spiral quickly once the growth engine disappears from the court. That's not Clark's fault. That is a massive organizational failure by people who should have known better. The way Clark was treated will absolutely be documented for history. ESPN will make their 30 for 30 inches documentary about how the WNBA had its biggest star ever and somehow created an environment so toxic that she considered leaving. They'll show how veteran players responded to success with jealousy instead of gratitude. How union leadership prioritized personal business ventures over collective interests. They'll highlight how league management failed to protect their most valuable asset. It'll be a masterclass in organizational dysfunction and squandered opportunity. Europe represents freedom from all of that dysfunction for her. No CBA drama to worry about. No jealous veterans throwing elbows at her head. No media narratives constantly questioning whether she deserves credit for the growth she obviously created. Just basketball in competitive environments with players and organizations that actually want her there and appreciate her talent. The lifestyle differences are significant too. European clubs often provide housing, cars, and other amenities that make life incredibly comfortable. The pace is more relaxed without the constant media scrutiny that comes with being America's most polarizing athlete. The financial comparison is more complex than it appears on the surface. WNBA salaries are capped, but European contracts can be very lucrative, especially for star players of her magnitude. When you add in the benefits and the lower cost of living in some markets, the total compensation package often exceeds what American teams can offer under current CBA terms, and none of that depends on negotiations that might drag on for months or years. European clubs can offer clear terms immediately without uncertainty about future salary structures. Clark's endorsement deals already dwarf her WNBA salary by a mile. Nike, Gatorade, State Farm, those relationships continue regardless of where she plays basketball. Her global brand actually might grow faster playing in Europe because it positions her as bigger than American women's basketball. She becomes an international star rather than someone defined by one league's dysfunction. That narrative shift could be incredibly valuable long-term for building a post-playing career. The panic setting in among WNBA stakeholders is entirely justified. They're realizing that the growth they celebrated might have been borrowed rather than earned. It came from one player's impact, not from systemic improvements or collective effort. Remove that player, and you're left with a league that most people still don't care about. That reality should have been obvious, but denial is powerful when acknowledging the truth means admitting you've been wrong all along. The owners seem to understand this better than the players do. They're not panicking about union threats because they know their leverage improves significantly if Clark leaves. They can point to collapsed ratings as justification for not meeting player demands. They can argue that the union overplayed its hand and destroyed the value they were trying to capture. The negotiating dynamic completely flips once the source of recent growth removes herself from the equation. Players who spent 2 seasons resenting Clark are about to learn a very expensive lesson about biting the hand that feeds you. Their earning potential exists because she brought attention and money into the league. Their leverage in CBA talks depends entirely on sustained growth she generated. If she leaves and everything collapses, they're the ones who'll suffer most. Clark has options. She'll be fine, no matter what. The veterans whose careers depend on WNBA viability are the ones who should be absolutely terrified right now. The regret is already visible if you know where to look. Players who dismissed Clark's impact are now quietly acknowledging that viewership did drop significantly without her. Media members who criticized her are deeply worried about whether casual fans will return if the season gets delayed. Union representatives are realizing their negotiating position wasn't nearly as strong as they thought, but admitting mistakes requires humility that hasn't been demonstrated yet. The panic is real because they finally understand exactly what they're about to lose. Smash that like button and subscribe to see how this disaster unfolds because, believe me, it's getting worse by the day.